Hello, welcome to this audio recording of the information contained in the Good Job Professional Training Program. There are 5 sections with 10 questions to test your knowledge at the end. Thank you for joining us. All right, let's begin. The Good Jobs Leadership Course. Thank you for investing in yourself and this program. Our goal here is to train the next generation of permaculture professionals to mainstream the regenerative economy as the means to turn the divide between environmental stewardship and the industrial development into an economic multiplier. Climate action, as seen as a capital expense, when the economic reality is it's a capital gain. Avoided cost, a system fueled by reliable innovation, and the profits of peace are just some of what we gain when we make the investments in ourselves, our world, and each other. Social, cultural, and environmental attributes are the fringe benefits of sound economic strategies that use food and the elimination of waste as the means to create good jobs that keep the cost of living low and the quality of life high for all members of the community. This course is intended to help you navigate the strange new worlds of regenerative economics as it pertains to capital improvements, comprehensive economic development strategies, and good governance of an enlightened populace. Permaculture guides the conversation of an economic formula that constantly regenerates itself instead of a system of rampant consumption we have today. Regenerative economics provide the worldview of a system we share and of all we are all stewards. The Just Community framework isn't just a local process through which to bring people to the table. It serves as the table where everyone finds nourishment far beyond food and well into the future. Section 1, Good Jobs for a Green World. The Good Jobs for a Green World plan centers around one very simple economic equation, 100,000 to 0. This formula represents that on average, the government pays roughly $100,000 each year to deal with people that are homeless or in prison system, and it gets 0 for returns. We use the framework of the Just Communities program, a model of mixed-use urban regeneration, the Bridge Eco-Village, and new frontiers being explored in aerospace to help people who have been beaten down to look up, and together we can all move forward. The premise is to create one legacy project in each city and each state to serve as a center for transformation. Graduates of the one-year program become empowered permaculture professionals to create more legacy projects in more communities until each state achieves practical sovereignty, which is the best form of national and global security. The regenerative economy is based on the system's approach to add value contributions to the investments in capacity as a key of resilience. The production of natural systems and the investment into people as a whole is an investment strategy into reliable innovation. While many companies in the past and still today take short-term profits and attempt to pass on the long-term cost of extracting value from workers instead of empowering them to thrive, to meet their basic needs, to have support in their personal goals, and to have access to the wraparound services as needed to ensure that healing and teaching become the fabric of healthy communities. There's an industry article along with this from Thriving Communities. So this article is from April 14th, 2023. The crucial roles of reducing recidivism rates in the transforming lives and communities. While many people understand the concept of prison, few are aware of the complexities of reentry. In fact, for many, including the families of those transitioning back into their communities after a prison term, the challenges only continue. The headwinds can provide such high barriers to success that the likelihood of reoffense is extraordinarily high. Every year, over 600,000 individuals are released from prison across the United States, hoping to reintegrate into society and start anew. However, 50% of them find themselves back behind bars within 3 years of release. This alarming recidivism rate highlights the urgent need for comprehensive reentry programs and criminal justice reform. By investing in initiatives that reduce recidivism rates, we can transform lives, strengthen communities, and promote public safety throughout the country. Recidivism is the tendency of a convicted criminal to reoffend. It is a complex issue with far-reaching consequences. High recidivism rates not only strain our already overcrowded prison systems, but also impact families, communities, and the economy. Reducing recidivism is vital for several reasons. One, improving public safety. Effective reentry programs help formerly incarcerated individuals reintegrate into society, gain employment, and access essential services. By addressing the root cause of criminal behavior and providing support, these programs contribute to a decreased crime rate and an increase in overall public safety. Strengthening families and communities. High recidivism rates have a devastating effect on families and communities. Children of incarcerated parents face a high risk of poverty, mental health issues, and academic difficulties. By helping formerly incarcerated individuals become productive members of society, we can foster stronger, more resilient communities. Promoting social equality and justice. The criminal justice system disproportionately impacts marginalized populations, including people of color and those living in poverty. By addressing recidivism and investing in comprehensive reentry programs, we can work towards creating a more equitable and just society. To reduce recidivism rates in the United States, we must invest in evidence-based reentry programs that provide formerly incarcerated individuals with tools and resources they need to succeed. Some key components of effective reentry programs include education and job training. Providing access to education, vocational training, and job placement services can help formerly incarcerated individuals secure stable employment and build a solid foundation for their future. Mental health and substance abuse treatment. Many individuals in the criminal justice system struggle with mental health and substance abuse disorders. Not only that, the trauma of prison can impact the ability of an individual to thrive. Access to healing resources, treatment, and counseling services is essential for a successful reintegration into society. Housing assistance. Finding safe, stable housing can be particularly challenging for those with criminal records. Reentry programs that offer housing assistance and support can help individuals avoid homelessness, like reducing the rates of reoffending. Legal and financial support. Navigating the complexities of life after prison can be overwhelming. Providing access to legal assistance and financial education can help formerly incarcerated individuals overcome barriers and regain control of their lives. Family and community support. Strong social connections are crucial for successful reentry. Programs that facilitate family reunification and encourage community involvement can help individuals build their support network and foster a sense of belonging. Reducing recidivism rate requires a multi-pronged approach and the support of various stakeholders, including policymakers, law enforcement agencies, community organizations, and citizens. By working together, we can create an environment that promotes second chances, breaks the cycle of crime and incarceration, and ultimately strengthens our communities. Here's a related video.
We're not supposed to be out here.
In 1995, a fella named Chris Kleba decided to open a gym in his hometown of Northville, Michigan. Fitness had changed his life, and he wanted others in small-town Michigan to have the same experience. But the problem with gyms is they can be intimidating. It's the ultimate irony. You go to a gym to get in shape, but if you're out of shape, you feel like you need to get in shape just to show up. That's why as many as 50% of gym members quit within the first year, which is fine if you open a gym in New York or LA with millions of people. But in a small town, you might simply run out of customers. Now, Many gyms try to solve this problem by making it difficult to quit. So now, not only am I feeling guilty about not going to the gym, but I'm stuck paying $100 a month and I'm still not getting any thinner. But Chris decided to do something different. Chris decided to invest in his workers. He hired overly helpful, overly friendly employees who at any moment were eager to step in and help you learn how to use a piece of equipment without making you feel like you're being judged. The idea was for the 55-year-old mom or dad who'd never been to a gym before in their lives to feel welcome and comfortable immediately. Now, my question as a private equity investor is, could this really be profitable? There's an old joke about a man who's had too much to drink looking for his keys under a streetlight. A cop comes by and offers to help and asks where he thinks he lost them. In the park comes the response, but I'm looking here because the light's better. That's a little how we investors look at companies today. We know that value at companies is driven by people, but we focus on short-term profit because it's so much easier to measure. I've worked in and around private equity for 25 years on 6 continents, and I've seen this error in thinking again and again and again. In private equity, we buy companies and seek to improve them so we can sell them at a profit. But very often, that improvement comes in the form of cutting costs, especially labor costs. Private equity employs roughly 9 million people and has cut over 1 million jobs in the past decade. Too often, we ask a company for their org chart just to figure out who's getting fired. Now, I think investors should take pride for helping to make companies lean. But I'm worried that we may have done our job too well and are now at risk of starving companies of the people that they need to be successful. So, the big opportunity for investors, for executives, and for you is to create rather than cut good jobs. Creating good jobs is now the focus of my work as a social impact investor. But to create good jobs, you first need a definition of a good job, which was surprisingly hard to find. Spreadsheets and numbers are comforting, but people are complicated, which is why impact investing can sometimes feel squishy. Good for the soul, perhaps, but risky for the pocketbook. But my partners and I work at a company that prides itself on using data to solve problems. So we spent the last 2 years looking at all the academic research, reading all the case studies. We interviewed human capital experts and surveyed workers across hundreds of companies. And from that work, we developed a common sense definition of a good job, one that correlates with worker productivity and helps us to build better companies. So here it is. A good job is where a worker, 1, is fairly treated, 2, has a promising future, 3, feels psychologically safe, and 4, has a sense of purpose. Now, by this definition, only about 1/3 of jobs today qualify as good jobs. But that's where data-driven impact investing can help. By putting hard numbers to each of these conditions, we can score each job at the companies we invest in and then work to improve the number of good jobs at these companies. So let's go through each of these 4 conditions in turn. And as we do, think about the place where you work. How does it measure up? If the answer is not good, don't worry. You can help point your company in the right direction. So here we go. Number 1, a worker is fairly treated. Now, we spend roughly 1/3 of our adult lives working. So whether you work at Marshall's or Microsoft, you want your employer to pay you fairly for all that time. But many investors see worker pay as a zero-sum game. Whatever a company gives to workers must somehow come at our expense, which is why when Home Depot announced early in COVID that they would be offering danger pay and making investments in worker safety, they saw their market value crash by billions of dollars.
If you or someone you love is struggling with an unwanted habit or addiction, you need to see this.
Danger pay and making investments in worker safety, they saw their market value crash by billions of dollars. But our research found over 100 studies that show that appropriate incentives, attractive benefits like retirement accounts and healthcare, And things like flexible schedules more than pay for themselves through improved productivity, higher retention, lower hiring costs. Home Depot itself is a company that's built on the idea of providing better service to customers by employing experts on its shop floors, people who have seen your problem before because they've worked in home repair or construction, and they can help you to fix it better. Now, Home Depot is thriving today thanks to its investment in workers. Now, fair pay is a critical thing, but it's not the only thing that matters, which brings us to our second condition, a promising future. Fast food restaurants not only pay low wages, they also offer very little in terms of learning and growth, which is why their employees quit after 6 to 12 months on average. Think about that the next time you get rude service at the drive-thru window. But training and career path can help to solve this riddle. Restaurants like Tender Greens in California and Boloco in Boston offer training to their low-wage workers that qualify them for management roles. So you might start out as a dishwasher earning $12 an hour, and then with the right training, you could become a restaurant manager in a matter of months, making nearly 3 times that much. Now, the prospect of tripling your wage is a powerful motivator, and the data shows that workers are much more loyal and dedicated when they feel that their company is helping them to build a career. Our third condition, psychological safety, should be a fairly obvious one. Think of the best boss you've ever had, the one that motivated you to go above and beyond at work. I bet that person was a listener. Because the modern workplace is increasingly a place of communication and collaboration. But many workers find it difficult or risky to speak up. Professor Amy Edmondson of Harvard has studied this issue in government, nonprofits, and companies, and found that most people's first instinct is to self-protect. Let's face it, life's too short to correct your boss's mistake if you think you might get fired as a result. Not speaking up is invisible, but it can cost the company valuable ideas. It can squander employee talent, or worse, it can put customers or employees at physical risk. Google found from its quest to create the perfect team that the most important ingredient was not the people involved, but rather the team's overall willingness to share and listen. It also found that great teams don't hide from their mistakes, but rather embrace them as opportunities for learning and to add to the overall IQ of their companies. Which brings us to purpose. It's a lot easier to share and listen to others if you and your colleagues feel passionately about your work. But do you feel passionately about the idea of going to work each day for the sole purpose of maximizing shareholder value for investors you've never met? It's just not a very energizing idea. Humans, unlike machines, want to feel connected to a higher purpose. They want to feel proud and useful. And fortunately, most companies out there do exist for a reason, but it can be hard to tell when so many of their mission statements read like they were generated by a robot. I actually used an online mission statement generator for this talk to see what would come back. The mission of my TED Talk is to offer smart insights with empathy, care, and thoughtfulness. Not bad for a computer. But a good mission statement is more than just nice words on a PowerPoint. A good mission statement can be the most distilled form of strategy, the guiding light for a company and its employees. That fitness chain I mentioned earlier, Impact Fitness, has a very clear mission to offer health through fitness in underserved communities. And they're deadly serious about it. The founder, Chris, likes to repeat the mission at company meetings. Most gym owners would be thrilled if their customers never showed up, so long as they keep paying the monthly bill. But Chris wants people to show up and work out in his gyms and get healthier. That's why he not only tracked gym usage, but tied it to executive pay. The company has gone from strength to strength, growing from that single gym in Northville, Michigan, to now over 3 dozen gyms across small-town Michigan, Indiana, and now Canada. And it's done so in a way that their employees have every reason to be proud of. It's an old corporate chestnut that our employees are our most valuable asset. Today, those words ring as hollow as the automated voice telling us how important our call is when we've been on hold for 10 minutes. But fortunately, creating good jobs isn't rocket science. These 4 conditions, fair treatment, a promising future, psychological safety, and purpose are relatively easy to track and improve. And to do that, though, requires investors and executives to work together. Because too often, well-meaning CEOs are cut short by short-term oriented investors and the boards that represent them. But I believe with a better measure of good jobs and the associated benefits, investors will support more investments in workers. Because who wouldn't want to create good jobs if you're creating more valuable companies at the same time? And our research shows that companies with a higher proportion of good jobs grow faster and are more profitable. They attract better talent and are more innovative. Investors ignore this issue at their peril, because in today's economy, good jobs aren't just good for society, they're good business. Thank you.
And over the whole world rose a clamor of hysterical joy against
Section 2. Permaculture is a design science that mimics the natural systems to produce comfort, security, and efficient use of resources. A Rosetta Stone of indigenous wisdom honed over the ages from observation and interaction with the natural world. It is a set of principles that guide the healthy culture, a robust economy, and a thriving environment. Applied in the garden, it provides a bountiful crop. Applied to the design of our homes, villages, and towns, it yields generational prosperity. As a national policy of resilience and adaptation, the climate crisis becomes the greatest opportunity to apply our imagination and ingenuity to creating good jobs today that will build a bright world of tomorrow. The starting point of the working in a circle is from the center out. A focus on capacity building within your circle of influence will increase your ability to address the issues that are in your circle of concern, whereas being spun up to exclusively focus on your concerns comes with the steep cost of your capacity to influence, produce, and ultimately be self-reliant. The core element of food, energy, and zero waste are the legs of an economic stool that gives marginalized people a seat at the dinner table and the boardroom. Whether on a backcountry homestead or an off-world colony, permaculture principles nurture life by meeting basic needs in a holistic and sustainable manner. The growth and development of local living economies that maintain participant control of the means of production are the victories that end wars and the steps to ensuring that we can thrive on this world or any other. Related industry article. The 12 principles of permaculture. Most of us now understand that our way of life on this planet has to change if humanity is to survive. We're faced with a range of challenges that threaten our very existence. It can be easy to become disheartened and to feel like shrugging our shoulders and asking what we as individuals can possibly do. Permaculture offers a ray of hope, a way forward. It offers everyone a chance to be part of the transition to a more eco-friendly, ethical, and sustainable future. What is permaculture? Permaculture is a blueprint for the way we live our lives. It's more than just dry and dusty philosophy. It moves beyond theory and gives us a range of practical solutions that we can use in every area of our lives. Permaculture was originally a word made up by two words, permanent and agriculture. But now the scope is broader, and permaculture is more often defined as permanent culture. Permaculture principles allow us to create a culture that can endure and thrive for generations to come. At its heart are three very simple tenets or ethics: care for the planet, care for people, and fair share, which also involves returning surplus to the system. Permaculture grew out of a sustainable agriculture movement originally developed by Bill Mollison and David Holmgren in Australia in the 1970s, and has since grown into a global movement inspiring people to get involved and create positive changes all around the world. The 12 principles of permaculture. Permaculture gives us a range of practical solutions for a better world. These principles are most commonly used in relation to food growing systems, but can also be used to guide us in all parts of our lives. To help us understand how permaculture leads us to a more ethical and sustainable way of life, it's useful to look at a list of 12 design principles pulled forward by David Holmgren. 1, observe and interact. Being observant and responding to the way we see is really important to moving towards a more ethical and sustainable way of life. We can learn from nature and from other people, observing how others have moved to a greener and more ethical approach, and working with the world around us, succeed in our goals. 2, catch and store energy. Energy is abundant on our planet. Learning how to catch and store that energy in plants with renewable energy infrastructure or in other ways is key to living a sustainable way of life. Grow your own food at home is a great way to capture and store energy from our sun. Passive solar design also offers for architects, engineers, and designers to make further use of this abundant energy source. 3, obtain a yield. Taking the 3 core ethics of permaculture into account, we can work with nature to get all the things we need. Obtaining a yield that can be simple as using organic gardening tools to provide food for our families, but it can also be about obtaining non-tangible yield, happiness, health, or mental well-being. Living a sustainable lifestyle that sticks to permaculture principles can allow us to obtain all sorts of more tangible yields, as well as the more tangible ones. 4, applying self-regulation and feedback. Understanding where we've succeeded and where we've gone wrong is vitally important to creating real and lasting change. For example, by analyzing and evaluating all the things we bring into our homes, we can make better purchasing decisions moving forward, reducing, reusing, recycling, and regulating the worst of our consumerist tendencies. 5, use and value renewables. By using the power of the sun, the wind, the water, we can power our homes, grow our own food, and regenerate our environments. Rather than relying on finite and polluting fossil fuels, we should make use of renewable energy sources. For example, switching to a green energy supplier or even generating our own power with solar panels or other renewables infrastructure at home is something many of us can do to move towards a more sustainable way of life. Produce no waste. Moving towards a zero waste lifestyle means looking at all the trash we've chucked out and trying to eliminate it. We can do this by reducing the amount we buy, by buying wisely, by reusing or recycling where possible, by composting, and by working with ethical companies who look at waste through the entire life cycle of their products. 7, design from patterns to detail. Whether designing a new vegetable garden or an entire new sustainable way of life, we have to look at the big picture before we get bogged down into the little steps. Thinking holistically about all areas of our lives can help us move forward in a positive direction. 8, integrate, don't segregate. Plants work well in diverse systems. The same is true of people. Planting polycultures, guilds of plants which work together, is just one example of how this principle works in the real world. And as we apply this in the garden, we can also apply it to communities, groups, or organizations. Sustainability is something we can achieve together through collaboration and cooperation. It's not something we do alone. Use small, slow solutions. Every journey begins with a single step. Whenever we try to do too much too soon, it easily becomes overwhelming. And through big challenges can bring big benefit, they also bring bigger risk too. Making small incremental changes is the best way to move forward a sustainable change. For example, don't try to start a farm, try to start a small windowsill garden. Don't overhaul your entire shopping philosophy. Change things one ethical purchase at a time. 10, use and value diversity. Just as ecosystems work best when filled with greater variety of plants and animals, so do human societies function when there are a variety of different people are represented. In your garden, home, or in your life in general, it's a good idea to promote the value of diversity in all of its forms. Use edges and value the marginal. Sustainability is about making use of all the resources that we have at our disposal. Whether it's talking about the land use, workplace, home, or society in general, making use of all we have involves valuing fringes and fringe elements. This might be as simple as using a neglected corner of your outside space to grow more food, or something more abstract like thinking outside the box. 12. Creatively use and respond to change. Finally, change is an inevitable part of life. It's important to remember that permaculture isn't just about now, but about the future. We design for change, understanding that things will alter over time. The changing seasons, the changing attitudes, our changing climate. How we respond to these changes will shape the sustainable progress in years to come. These principles are a starting point for understanding of permaculture and can begin to give us an idea of how we can translate to action and transition to a more ethical and truly sustainable way of life. Related art video.
Siri, play that one song Diego sent me. Okay.
So it's really less of an issue than money to make a good neighborhood than it is an issue of intelligence and information. The solutions that I'm going to show you right now are for neighborhood design and are embarrassingly simple. And when you realize how obvious the patterns are for arranging houses, roads, water runoff, and trees, you're going to be shocked by how contemporary housing developments are so foolishly designed. Let's start by talking about solar orientation. My drawing here is in the northern hemisphere, far enough away from the equator where you have a distinct winter and summer seasons. If you're in the southern hemisphere, then you just flip the compass. Now I've drawn every house so it's elongated to the east and west and facing the south. This is passive solar design 101. So when the sun is lower on the horizon during the winter, the house is oriented to receive the maximum amount of winter sunlight for solar heating and natural lighting. Then in the summertime, when the sun is more directly overhead, windows are shaded by this roof overhang, and the smallest side of the building faces the rising sun to the east and the hot setting sun to the west. So the buildings remain cooler inside. And then the south-facing side of the roof is also a great place to put solar panels. And then the south side of the house is also a really great place for a veggie garden, where you can gaze out of your sun-facing windows and see your food growing abundantly from the compost you produce from your house. And the water for those gardens can be provided by collecting rainwater right off of the roof. Now, tanks can provide privacy between neighbors, and they'll also store the heat of the sun when it's hot, and then they'll radiate it back out to the gardens when it's cool. But a water tank will not store all of the rainfall from roofs in most climates. So there's going to be excess overflow from these tanks. And there's also going to be excess water running off of all the roadways and any other impermeable hard surfaces during rainfall. So if the water from the roads is flowing this direction, then on the north or the shady side of the houses, we can dig out a big sunken basin for all of this excess rainwater to collect into. So with all of that stormwater runoff directed into these big basins, it's a great place to plant your permaculture food forest. Trees can grow big and provide nuts, fruits, berries, leaf mulch, wood, and habitat while being located where they'll not block the sun for the next row of houses. Now you'll notice that I didn't make a driveway or a garage in my drawing, because in my little dream street here, cars can park on the road and we don't need to build our cars their own garages. Now, most of these design elements don't cost any more money than in a conventional housing development. Like solar orientation, for instance, it's completely free to have all those houses on a street facing south. Not only that, but a properly oriented south-facing passive solar house uses 50% less energy than a house oriented facing east or west. So just by facing these houses towards the sun, we cut energy consumption for heating and cooling by half. As far as the water harvesting goes, all developments need to account for grading and drainage anyway. So collecting the water to grow a food forest really doesn't cost more than underground storm drains and conventional landscape installation. And for all those resources you put into installing, fertilizing, mowing, and watering a lawn, you might as well grow your own vegetables instead. So it's really less of an issue than money to make a good neighborhood than it is an issue of intelligence and information. So let's blow this up for a minute and look at the bigger pattern of this street that I've drawn. So here we have the same neighborhood I drew, but 4 blocks of it. House, garden, road, food forest swale, house, garden, road, food forest swale, house, garden, road, food forest swale, house, garden, road. But this is actually not very efficient because there's double the amount of roads that there really needs to be. So here we have house, garden, food forest swale, house, garden, road, house, garden, food forest swale, house, garden, road. See, we reduced the number of roads by half, similar to a conventional housing development, but instead of a back fence or an alley where the 2 properties meet, we put a common water harvesting swale with a community pathway, and we also made the food forest and gardens bigger than we did in this other drawing. So you can see I drew in this little community pathway. Now in this design, all the excess runoff from roads, roofs, pathways, and patios, it drains into these common swales that can be planted with fruits, nuts, and different kind of awesome plants of all kinds. That's actually exactly the design that you see on the most excellent housing development called Village Homes in Davis, California. Although many homes did place trees due south of the houses, which will reduce the sunlight they receive in wintertime. But winters are pretty warm where this place is located in California. But why even stick to the grid at all? We can create neighborhoods where all the houses are oriented for passive solar and center around a common community farm area. All right, so here the runoff collects in a central pond in the center of a south-facing arc of homes. And the food forest swale goes around the backside of the houses to the north, with the roads completely on the margins and then agriculture in the center. But what if our neighborhood is not on flat land at all? So on a slope, a neighborhood can be built along a contour line around a water harvesting pond. The roadway can be arranged so it's also directing water into the pond, and houses are built around the pond, which reflects more light into the buildings in wintertime when the sun is low on the horizon and shines on the pond. Okay, so you get the idea. We can keep on going and going, drawing different patterns of settlement which work intelligently with the light, water, slope, and access. In permaculture, every site is recognized for its unique characteristics. So every design is specific to its place. There's no one way to design a permaculture neighborhood, and the possibilities are literally endless. But one thing that's required is an awareness of how natural forces like light and water move through the landscape, and a desire to create a more harmonious interaction with these forces. So good luck, and may you be blessed to live in a permaculture neighborhood.
All right, section 3, regenerative economics. Sometimes referred to as the blue or circular, the regenerative resource-based economy is the application of permaculture principles to building an enlightened planetary civilization. Our extractive system is a construct like a grass hut that serves us for a time. But brick and mortar, made from hemp, is what we need to endure the test of time. The leap forward from extraction to regeneration is the paradigm shift that can impact the damage to our short-sighted mentality has wrought. Modeling the constant change of nature is how we move from scarcity towards the relative stability of abundance for all life who share this home. The fatal flaw in our current economic system is that it attempts to separate the impacts humans have on the environment by labeling them as externalities and suggesting that the invisible hand of the market will keep things balanced. However, the biological reality is that we all live in a closed system, and there is no cost that we do not pay eventually. Recognizing that our world is a complex living organism and we coexist with her in a symbiotic relationship is key to our collective survival. Understanding our knowledge, awareness, and skills give us the ability to change our world, and with this great power comes good responsibility of good stewardship. Many falsely believe America runs on fossil fuels, mineral extraction, and expansive consumption. However, history indicates time and again that it's the innovation of an empowered mind that has allowed our civilization to move forward, sometimes at a steady pace, and sometimes by leaps and bounds. Society is a construct that was created and with the intent to evolve, to learn from the past, to do better in the future, and prepare everyone to make the best of what comes next. Article. The third principle of a circular economy is to regenerate nature. By moving from the take, make, waste linear economy to a circular economy, we support the natural process and leave more room for nature to thrive. From extraction to regeneration. By shifting our economy from linear to circular, we shift the focus from extraction to regeneration. Instead of continuously degrading nature, we build natural capital. We employ farming practices that allow nature to rebuild soils and increase biodiversity and return biological material to the earth. Currently, most of these materials are lost after use, and the land used to grow them is depleted of nutrients. If we move to a regenerative model, we begin to emulate natural systems. There is no waste in nature. When a leaf falls from a tree, it feeds the forest. For billions of years, natural systems have regenerated themselves. Waste is a human invention. The food industry. The obvious place to start when shifting to an economy that regenerates nature is the food industry. The way we produce food is a significant driver for both climate change and biodiversity loss. It relies on ever-increasing qualities of synthetic fertilizer, pesticides, fossil fuels, fresh water, and other finite resources. These are sources of pollution and damage to ecosystems and human health. By producing our food regeneratively, the focus is on improving soil health. Regenerative farming practices can significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions from food production by reducing reliance on synthetic inputs and by putting healthy soils that absorb rather than release carbon. As well as helping restore the natural carbon cycle, healthy soils are better able to hold water, reducing the impact of droughts, and are better able to absorb water, reducing the risk of flooding. These regenerative food production practices include agroecology, conservation agriculture, and agroforestry, growing trees around or among crops or pastures. This results in agricultural land that is more closely resembles natural ecosystems like forest and native grasslands, providing habitat for a wide range of organisms, thereby increasing biodiversity. Reducing the need for synthetic inputs and pesticides, polluters, and microbes in the soil, which are essentially for the maintenance of healthy ecosystems, can thrive. More space for nature. In addition to food systems, there are other benefits for natural ecosystems by adopting a circular economy. By keeping products and materials in use, less land is required for such virgin raw materials from AK mining. If we gradually decouple economic activities from the mineral extraction by keeping materials in circulation after use, more and more can be turned and returned to nature, and rewilding can happen. In a circular economy, land dedication to material sourcing will increasingly be focused on renewable resources growing in a regenerative way, rather than the extraction of finite resources, which will increasingly remain in circulation. All this will be underpinned by a transition to 100% renewable energy, producing infrastructure designed for reuse, repair, remanufacturing, and recycling. Tackling climate change. Transitioning to a renewable energy alone will only tackle 55% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. The rest will come from the way we make and use and produce food and manage land. This is where the circular economy comes in. The economic health and environmental benefits of a circular economy for food alone would be worth 2.7 trillion a year by 2050. By adopting circular economic principles, the food industry could halve its productive greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Examples of companies regenerating nature. Connect the Dots is a city-led initiative to promote local regenerative agriculture in the rural zone in the state of San Pablo, protecting natural systems threatened by urban sprawl and conventional agricultural practices. These municipalities produce produce from local farmers to provide healthy food to vulnerable people. It does so at 30% more than market value to incentivize the transition to regenerative practices and promoting social inclusion. Natura is South America's largest cosmetic company and the 5th largest beauty company in the world. It produces a huge range of products, including soaps, creams, and shampoos, all of which rely on the rich biodiversity of the Amazon for ingredients and materials, as well as the biointelligence of indigenous communities. The company's supply chain includes almost 40 types of biodiversity assets, plant-based ingredients that were involved in about 70,000 families. And the involvement of about 7,000 families. A key element of Natura's business model is the concept of the standing forest economy. In simple terms, this means that a tree has much more economic value standing than it has felled. This philosophy has preserved over 2 million hectares of Amazon rainforest, with the goal of increasing this to 3 million hectares a year by 2030. The principles of regenerating nature is not limited to the land and can be applied to the ocean as well. Green Wave's 3D ocean farming method produces a mixture of shellfish and seaweed in a nature-positive way. It comprises a simple lattice of ropes and baskets suspended just below the surface, with species growing at different depths. This approach can be used for commercial farming or products used for food, fertilizer, animal feed, and bioplastics while restoring marine ecosystems. Regenerative ocean farms can also boost marine diversity. The farm's assembly mimics the vertical structure of an ocean reef, providing layers of different habitat for a wide variety of diverse species. The 3D method of regenerative ocean farming is very effective as it stacks a number of enterprises on top of each other, creating abundance in a small area. As it is fairly simple, startup costs are low. Anyone with access to 20 acres and a boat can set up a farm for about 20,000 to 50,000 and producing about 6,000 kilograms of kelp and 250,000 shellfish each year. Moving forward, by adopting the third principle of a circular economy, regenerate nature, we can shift our priorities. No longer should our focus be on simply doing less harm to the environment, but how we can actively improve it. If the economy follows circular principles, the more we do, the greater the benefits. Related art video.
In a resource-based economy, we would make all the resources of the world, that is the nations that join us, available to everyone. There would be no scientific elite or technical elite or any other type of elitism. There'd be no heroes. All people would be trained or educated to understand our relationship to nature. If you violate that relationship, it won't work. All man-made laws are artificial. We have to study our relationship to nature. If we damage the air, we damage ourselves. If we damage the oceans, we damage ourselves. If we cut down the forest, we damage our ability to maintain health. So I would say that the history of civilization is a ruthless history of men killing other men for no other reason than your God is different than mine. And they kill and murder and torture, always the same story. The history of civilization is the history of ignorance. And I would say every university in America, although better equipped than they've ever been in the past, our wars are getting worse. The bombs today are thousands of times more devastating than the bombs of the past. So what good is all this technology if you don't have the wisdom to use it to enhance the lives of everybody? Anything less than that will not work. Trying to patch up this system is artificial. It's crude, it's vulgar, it is old, it doesn't have any answers. As long as the monetary system survives, you're going to have problems. With money, yes, it does produce incentive. It also produces incentive for corruption, embezzlement, and also taking care of your friends and taking care of yourself. When people seek advantage by money, you can't have a decent world. When you have wars and people make millions of dollars selling submarines, I'm talking about billions of dollars, and aircraft carriers, then war becomes a terrific business. It's really a racket. When they conscript a person to offer their lives to defend this country, they should conscript all the war industries so no one makes a buck out of war. Then it's real. I've never known a war of that kind.
Jack, can you describe what your future would be like?
The future, people would study whatever they wanted to study. There'd be art centers, music centers, cultural centers, open to everyone without a price tag. There'd be no banks, no investment brokers, no advertising, no commercials, no armies, no navies, no prisons, and no police. When humans have access to the necessities of life, they do not steal. If you don't understand that, imagine people living near a big waterfall with fresh water, lots of it. No one comes at night and steals water. When people have access to the necessities of life, they do not steal. This system is one of increasing debt, human suffering, and also freedom. The word freedom means you're responsible for whatever you do. I say that people are not responsible. I feel that if normal people were raised as babies by the headhunters of the Amazon, they would be headhunters. If you took a Jewish baby and raised him in Nazi Germany by a Nazi family, he would be a Nazi. That people reflect their culture. If you don't understand that, people raised in Italy speak and use their hands when they speak. Same in France. Come on, eat, it's a good food. But that is not a unique quality of the individual. That's what he picks up from his environment. If you're raised in Ireland, say you're Spanish, and you're raised as a baby in Ireland, you say that's a fine Irish lad. He's taking good care of his family. As fine an Irishman as you can achieve. Surely all that they say is picked up from environment. So when you're a Southerner, brought up in an uneducated region of the South, you say, I'm gonna give me a nigger and I'm gonna kick his ass. All that is reflective of culture. There's no such thing as individuality. All they talk about, will there be place for individuality? Will there be a place for tradition? If traditions serve useful purposes, yes. If they're obsolete and irrelevant, no.
Okay, section 4, just communities. Just like the Good Jobs Plan brings together various elements that have been tested through time, the Just Communities Framework, formerly Eco-Districts, is a combination of science, economics, and decades of social research on bringing people together from all walks of life and share in the journey of discovery that is community planning. The CEDS, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, is the point where public policy and private investment share space to drive investments into creating livable neighborhoods by nurturing local living economies around energy, food, and zero waste. Housing, public health, education, jobs, crime, and addiction issues are all solvable with a good plan. The Just Communities framework serves as a loom to weave together the various interest, perspectives, and agendas into a tapestry of rich culture and commerce. It provides a means to measure the metrics that ensure communities can keep the cost of living low while maintaining a high quality of life for all. Somewhere between a bohemian ecotopia and a technological dystopia is the narrow balance between the economy and the environment. Between economy of scale and small social solutions that are sustained at regional scale, there is a bounty of innovation for solutions that are appropriate scale to meet the needs of the community without compromising future generations' abilities to meet theirs, or for the natural world to thrive in peace and diversified abundance. Living with the earth means that creating global infrastructure for the here and now, we plan to protect and preserve what we all love and share, the earth. Industry article. Building cities in the future with green districts. At the current pace of urbanization, the world's cities will add 65 million inhabitants a year between now and 2025. The resulting demand for infrastructure will mean that each year, India alone will need to add as much floor space as exists in all of Chicago and China, more than twice that. The way the world builds now will determine urban sustainability in emissions, waste production, and water use for decades. In this article, we will examine what could become the building blocks for sustainable future cities of the future, green districts. The term is new and still imprecise. Our definition of a green district is a densely populated and geographically cohesive area that is located within a city and employs technology and design elements to reduce resource use and pollution. In general, green districts deploy design principles that lead to a dense, transit-oriented mixed-use development. They also consider using renewable energy resources. Eco Districts, a Portland, Oregon-based nonprofit that specializes in helping governments and others to develop sustainable cities, notes that green districts are interesting because they are small enough to innovate quickly and big enough to have meaningful impact. Interest is growing. The U.S. Green Building Council has started a program based on a successful leadership in energy and environmental design LEED rating system for individual buildings to evaluate the concepts for sustainable neighborhoods. Known as LEED Neighborhood Development, LEED ND, it is the first system of its kind. According to the council, the idea is to integrate the principles of smart growth, new urbanism, and green building. So far, more than 300 projects have earned the LEED NE rating. Estimata, a program in the Middle East, launched a similar rating system in 2010. Several organizations are supporting the development of the promotion of green districts worldwide. In 2014, the Clinton Global Initiative and Eco Districts began the Target Cities program. The idea was to revitalize neighborhoods in 8 North American cities: Atlanta, Austin, Boston, Cambridge, Mass, Denver, Los Angeles, Ottawa, and Washington, D.C., and learn the process to create models from which other communities can learn. There are 3 reasons to believe that green districts will continue to grow. Green districts are economically viable. To date, the self-defined green districts that have been built, including the utopian development of Northampton, England, the 1,145-acre Savanio project in Tucson, Arizona, have concentrated on offering environmental benefits. There has been less attention to the question of whether they are economically sustainable. For example, one estimate is that Chivano, which is slated to have 2,600 families with sharply lower waste, energy, and car use, costs $20 million more to develop than a similar size convention master planned community. But that does not track or does that not take into account return on capital and long-term payback. To evaluate this question, we created a model that compares the cost of buildings a green district versus a conventional one. We looked at 15 well-developed green district technology covering buildings, waste, water, transport, and utilities. We also considered 10 design elements such as permeable pavement, green spaces, bike lanes, and building orientation. We then applied this analysis to 3 geographic areas and have different needs, but of interest in the subject: Northern North America, the Yangtze River Delta in China, and the Persian Gulf region. In North America, cities such as New York, Portland, Oregon, and Toronto are building or planning to build green districts. In China, the government has made eco-cities a part of its newest 5-year plan. In the Persian Gulf, entire new cities such as Masdar, United Arab Emirates, and the energy city Qatar are being built with explicit sustainability goals. In each market, we use the models to assess a greenfield location, that is, a new district built from scratch. The model can, however, be adapted to brownfield or infill developments. The model calculated how much the various technologies and design choices cost, the cost of building the material and maintaining the green district versus the traditional one, and considered such variables as baseline energy demands, density, population, and per capita floor space. When it is estimated how much of these affect annual operating costs, the rate of return, looking at 1/4 kilometer districts with a measure of 70% residential and 30% commercial use, we assume application of relevant technology. We took into account that the mix of technologically deployed will vary. A green district in Canada will not look or operate like one in Saudi Arabia. To illustrate, we then ran a model for the hypothetical city in the coastal provinces of Yangtze River Delta in central China. We found that by optimizing building orientation and installing permeable pavements that reduce the flow of water to treatment systems delivered the greatest return on investment. In addition, the former delivered sizable savings on energy, and the latter on water can be saved and reused. Other technologies such as enhanced building insulation, which delivered the greatest return in Midwest North America, dropped down the scale of return on investments in the Yangtze River Delta, were due to its more moderate heating and cooling needs. In contrast, there are some things like water submetering that can work anywhere. In this practice, individual households or businesses pay for the water they use, which is a great incentive to take shorter showers. That requires installing more meters, one per apartment, for example, rather than one for an entire building. So the short-term economics are almost neutral, but the savings in water use is substantial, on the order of 30% compared with conventional technologies. In short, we believe that in any city there is a list of green district technologies that make sense, but specifics will vary. Across all 3 case studies, we found that while not every green solution costs more than conventional alternatives, green districts do overall have a higher construction cost by about 10%. That comes out to $35 million to $70 million per square kilometer, or $1,000 to $4,000 per resident. However, annual operating costs are lower, and with savings of $250 to $1,200 per resident. The internal rate of return ranges from 18 to 30%. All of this translates into an even break-even rate of 3 to 5 years, depending on the region and technology deployed. And this does not take into account the substantial benefits of improved environmental quality. Our conclusion then is that green districts are economically viable as long as planners take care to match the right technology to the right location, taking into consideration climate, resource cost, regulation, and technology cost, including subsidies. In many cases, making the economics work is not so much a matter of cost as of timing. For example, installing a combined heat and power system costs about twice as much as a conventional natural gas system, but the operating costs are less than half, and the payback on the higher incurred cost is about 5 years. And that does not take into account the associated environmental benefits, which are 30 to 50% lower emissions. Green districts are environmentally beneficial. Compared with standard building, the construction practices and depending on the region, the total impact of the technologies considered in our model are substantial. 20 to 40% lower energy consumption, 60 to 65% less freshwater consumption and wastewater production, 25% less solid waste going to the landfill. private vehicle kilometers traveled were 50 to 80% less. The savings associated with green districts result from how different technologies work together. While buildings represent the most single important element in the energy and water savings, for example, the benefits are not just about what happens within the four walls. Other factors include where these buildings are located and how people move between them. Green districts have the great potential to produce economic savings as areas of high resource demand and cost. For example, technologies for reducing water use have a much faster payback period in the desert of the Middle East than in regions with more water. Similarly, a temperate city will likely have significantly longer paybacks for district heating technologies than one in a cold climate. Locally, if local districts are resource intensive or resources are costly, the district has a greater potential of producing savings that if resources are cheap or already consumed efficiently. Green districts can improve the quality of life. Green districts are not only gentler to the natural environment, but also may be kinder to humans who inhabit them. As cities grow, they often become more congested. That can raise the cost of living and doing business. But it also can mean more air pollution and thus more respiratory illness. For example, the World Health Organization estimates that there are about 1,600 cities for which it has information. The air quality in most of them does not meet its standards. Traffic congestion is not only an annoyance, but an expense. According to the recent research, congestion costs partially from the waste of time and patience of commuters equals to 1.5 to 4.0% of the GDP. Through better transit design and energy planning, green districts can set course towards cleaner, less congested, more livable cities. More self-defined green districts such as Malmö in Sweden and the shipyard districts in San Francisco and South Korea's Songdo International Business District are attractive and livable spaces. Some are also designed for social diversity. The Kreuzberg development just outside Hanover, Germany, for example, provides housing for various sizes and types, including condominiums, semi-detached, and single-family homes, as well as multi-forms of housing, finance, and ownership. The goal is to attract a wide variety of residents, including the disadvantaged. Green districts can also be part of urban revitalization, transforming vacant or changing areas in existing cities. Hamburg said in Stockholm, formerly a rundown, underused industrial district, is now a thriving eco-village. Its 25,000 residents benefit from a transportation system that generates 30 to 40% less carbon dioxide per household than comparable nearby districts, primarily because of the 40% fewer trips taken by private cars. It also has a wastewater treatment system and hot water from which is used in the local district's heating system and substantially lowers energy cost by 32 to 39%. The way ahead. Given these advantages, why haven't green districts already become the norm? The case for them is strong, but the real life can get in the way. One issue is that developers pay the bulk of extra costs for green districts up front, but they often are unable to charge more when they sell because owners see only higher sticker prices and not the long-term benefits of lower spending on water, energy, and sanitation. If developers cannot recoup their costs, they are not going to bother. The simplest way to overcome this difficulty is for the developer and the operator to be the same. For example, in new districts built by the universities, government complexes, and medical centers, these may therefore be the most logical places to start the movement because they are well positioned to test the value of green district technologies and design features. However, if green districts are to scale up, new business models are required. One possibility is for developers to own and operate the districts they build until they recover the additional cost, after which they sell. This is a change from traditional business models of developers selling properties as quickly as possible, often even before they are complete. Another option is for owner operators to step into the gap and take advantage of this opportunity. This is a role for cities might consider assuming, given that many utilities are municipality owned, and this is where a lot of the operating savings are. Given their environmental and commercial potential, green districts have become increasingly important to an urbanizing and resource-limited world. Green development will not make a bad deal a good deal. Like any other project, it requires the right location, marketing, and design. But green development can make a good deal a great one by maximizing the district's economic, social, and environmental potential. On that basic, green districts have a future and possibly a big one. Related video.
We've been lied to. This is the worst I've ever seen it. This is a place where people are so angry, so frustrated.
Design is about engaging people and place. It's the process of engaging people in the creation of places that they live and work and love that helps build community. I love making places. I love working with architecture, with landscape, with infrastructure, but I also find it incredibly important to address environmental issues, especially in this region where we are so close to really important environmental issues.
I've always been connected to the environment and sort of viewing our communities as ecosystems. I've also personally been connected to helping people to reach their personal goals, and that was the founding mission of New Sun Rising, which started back after flooding in 2004 as a result of Hurricane Ivan that hit a lot of the communities that we had a connection with, and really meeting people on the ground who had ideas and ways to improve their community, a lot of that being around the resilience and environmental sustainability of those neighborhoods moving forward.
Larimer first started out as a German town. It went to an Italian, then now is predominantly black. A lady named Orly Carroll had a vision for Larimer because she felt like Larimer was being disinvested and nobody thought about Larimer. So we sat down at the table at the Kingsley Association and we formed the Larimer Consensus Group. The work has definitely progressed because her thought was a green community. But in the sense of a green community, hers was more of the flowers and the trees. But now we're into a part where we're talking about infrastructure green, and that's stormwater management and bioswales, you know, as far as the way we build things in the community.
We're a city of neighborhoods, and so that passion for place and that attachment to shape the places that we live in is really important. Sustainable is good, but equitable and resilient and regenerative is even better. And so those are hard things to reach, and as a designer, we have a chance to bring our technical knowledge to folks and to help them understand where they're a part of closing those loops.
One thing that we've recognized is that community networks and residents have more power than they realize. So for a lot of our community partners, you know, it's actually helping them to be prepared for the pace of development, to be prepared for larger scale, bigger thinking, being more visionary in how they might imagine their community looking like in the next 20, 30 years so that they can be a part of those conversations, not a byproduct of.
We had the opportunity to win a $30 million grant from HUD, which gave us new housing. We've been at the table since the very beginning of the operation. We look at the vetting pieces of the design of what they're building. So we have our hands on, I mean, we might not have the expertise as engineers and architects, but we know what we like to see and what we don't want to see. We sat at the table for days talking about what it would be, so now they can see what it is.
All right, section 5, financing legacy projects. The difference between a neighborhood and a village isn't the population density or the level of infrastructure. It's the level of interaction between the populace. Separate from personal transactions, political relationships with governing bodies, a village is where a culture of caring is nurtured, and each individual is just as important as the whole. It is the level where policy and personality behavior interact and sometimes collide. but it is also where the most authentic engagements can occur. In the scope of the Good Jobs for a Green World plan, a legacy project is one that creates the space for these lasting engagements. The investments have very real returns, often in the double digits and sometimes as high as 30%. This is an important factor because economically viable projects that provide returns have greater impact and can have greater influence on future developments. Profit enables replication. A legacy project is the starting point for transition on a wider scale as it gives the community a chance to interact and engage in what will become part of their future skyline. One mixed use, for-purpose, multi-level commercial real estate project can provide keystone tenants, a way to attract other like-minded clients, and green buildings translate to lower operating costs, lower turnover, and greater profits. Multiplied and applied to capital improvements and comprehensive economic development strategies, the savings translate into revenue for reinvestment. A project with an economically viable model that can deliver solid social, environmental, and economic benefits are very attractive to social responsible private equity investors and angel investors, or grants can cover the engineering, procurement, and construction documents the investors need to evaluate. A small group of dedicated people with a place to put their plan into action can serve to attract initial support and the capital to turn the concept into a place to celebrate. Industry article, Smart Cities Dive. What's stifling city climate action? Municipal finance practices, one report says. The Boston University researchers highlight how city funding approaches make emission reduction projects easier and move forward in climate adaptation projects. Publix, March 27th, 2024. Claudia Diaz Martinez wants city officials to be more curious about how local climate programs are funded. The funding process is shaping which projects the city pursues and who they benefit, according to the February 2024 Nature Climate Change paper co-authored by Diaz Martinez, a PhD candidate at Boston University. What happens in the budget office or with people who are making decisions about municipal bonds are all of those things are very opaque, she said. Based on interviews with 34 municipal officials and other urban climate policy and finance professionals, the paper highlights 3 ways municipal finance practitioners constrain urban climate action. Money-saving or revenue-generating projects get priority. Projects that reduce or prevent greenhouse gas emissions often create tangible revenues or savings that enable cities to frame them as investment opportunities. The cities can more easily make the financial case for them. On the other hand, projects that help communities adapt to climate change impacts are perceived as not bankable or lacking the clear business model. That means that adaptation work often depends on the funding sources that are inaccessible for some cities, such as grants or earmarked revenue from sources such as stormwater fees and climate taxes. Climate adaptation may also be hindered by cities looking to bring in property tax revenue by allowing development in areas prone to climate risk, such as floods, and wildfire. Time-limited funding can hinder justice-centered climate action. Time constraints on municipal spending includes budgetary cycles, spending deadlines, or timelines for return on investment. That can create a tension between the need to get the money out the door and the democratic participation. According to one participation in the research, rush projects can prevent trust from being built between governments and marginalized communities, the paper adds. Another respondent gave the example of federal COVID-19 assistance grants, which some cities are using on climate action, which must be spent by December 2026. Other financial factors, like credit rating agencies and philanthropies, influence whether and how a city government invests in climate action. Many cities rely on having high credit scores to borrow the capital needed for large projects. That incentivizes local governments to make financial decisions these agencies reward. The papers Several respondents noted that this can include starving climate budgets or cutting maintenance budgets for crucial climate infrastructure, including green spaces. On the other hand, justice-oriented climate projects can be bolstered by institutions when they explicitly require funding projects to be incorporated with a justice lens. Requirements by the Bloomberg Philanthropies and the Barr Foundation and state federal governments are among those the state studies participants said led to the creation of justice-oriented projects. Cities with dedicated climate funds. Some cities and papers highlighted are taking matters into their own hands to set aside money for justice-centered climate projects. Denver raised its potential sales and uses its tax to create a climate protection fund, which raises $40 million a year, according to the city. Portland, Oregon uses surcharges on large retailers to support grants for local climate and justice work. A resident-led committee has the power to recommend how Portland's clean energy community benefits funds get used. One respondent said that the release of some power by the city is particularly important from an equity perspective. Portland's funds has raised more money than expected, and some city leaders proposed diverting some of the funds to support other cities' needs. A request rejected by the volunteer committee that makes spending recommendations. Notably, both Denver and Portland funds originated with voter-approved ballot measures. All right, well, there is 10 questions to complete the quiz and be certified. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to helping you work on your legacy project.